Are you in your? It seems a very. Typically sea power, really. The foliage and the greenery in the background.
Yeah, it's just my loft. It's where I do my music and everything, but it's also the sort of plant hospital. When one gets a bit wrong somewhere in the house or starts dying or, has to move out, I bring them up here because I can't bear to let them go.
Oh, mate, I don't really know what to say to that, to be honest.
I like them as well, but this one it's just, it's enormous, basically.
If I may be a little bit over contemplative in this conversation because I've just got out of therapy, and really? It was notable for two reasons. One, it was principally notable for one thing, which is that my therapist used the word cunt today.
Okay.
which was a first. But no, I have OCD, which is why I go to therapy. And a friend of mine who I know who also has OCD, one of her themes, one of her obsessions is that she's killing her plants.
Overwatering or something, or
just by neglect. So, her plants are like, I know this because during the kind of height of the pandemic when we would speak on Zoom, she'd always be looking at her plants behind her, and I'd be like, what's going on there? And she's like, I just think I'm a terrible person because my plants keep dying. So my advice to you, Scott, is that you don't worry about the plants too much because it's a bit of a road to nowhere.
And I'm not. It doesn't stress me out.
Good.
I just like to give them like another chance, and if they end up dying, then I gave them a good go.
You're like a sort of a plant probation officer.
Just one more chance.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing with plants is, maybe you should tell your friend this, that 90% of it I've worked out is just getting them in a place where they're happy and watering them once a week.
Unfortunately, the thing with OCD is we have a rule, and you're not supposed to give reassurance. So if you have a batshit obsession, like the way that you heal, so to speak, is, like I've been in my support group and gone, I'm obsessed that blah 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 blah, something mental, and they will say, well, we're not here to give reassurance, and they'll kind of phrase it in a different way. So actually, the way that she would deal with that obsession is almost to let a plant die and live with that guilt or that uncertainty. I feel a little bit like I'm blowing your mind here. Your eyes have gone
actually, I know a couple of people with a bit of OCD. They're quite interested in it as a thing, really. I think my dad had it a bit, to be honest.
Well, I was going to get to your dad. Can we talk about your dad?
Yeah, why not?
Because I was thinking that it must almost be 20 years since I last saw you face to face. I think I remember I think it was like my first ever Enemy feature, and it was it was in Kendal.
Right.
You were playing like a scout hut in Kendal. Do you remember that?
Scout hut? Really? No, I don't. Why were we doing that?
That's
something we would have done, but I can't actually remember it yet. I'm sure it would come back if there was a few more details.
It's so weird, isn't it? How like this is such a. I was talking about this with. I did like a little talk on Tuesday with some young people who wanted to become music writers. And obviously, the best piece of advice I could give them is don't do that. But after that, if someone wants to do it, they want to do it, and good on them. But I was actually talking about that piece that I did in Kendal and how I'd come and he'd played the Scout Hut, and I think we'd walked up a hill to do some photos, and. When I spent ages crafting the piece and really kind of saying the things I wanted to say, and when the piece ran, the features editor at the time had taken the initial pitch on an email and worked it into the piece. I think in his head, thinking he was some sort of like maverick editor, and almost like what I'd expressed when I wasn't trying to express it was better than what I'd done when I'd kind of crafted it. Which wasn't, it wasn't the greatest start to my writing career in terms of, being
like 20 years ago, and the enemy was quite an important thing, wasn't it? And people who worked there, maybe they were quite. They felt like they had to put their print on things or twist again. I thought that was going to go terribly. I thought you were going to say you'd thought about all these questions. You'd walked up this hill. We'd put you through these tasks, and then we were really rude and horrible.
No, not at all. I was like, I can't think of a band that I would have rather have spoke to for my first feature, and things went pretty well with my career after that. But the thing I always remember, and I've thought about it so much over the years, is that I came with my girlfriend, which is a bit of a weird thing to think about now. But I came with my girlfriend, my then girlfriend, and we went to some pub, and I went to speak to you. I think it was just you. And she stayed in the bar, and I think she got talking to your dad. And your dad said to her that, almost like, what do you think of the new record? And she said, we've been listening to it in the car on the way here. And he said, that song Larson B, it really worries me, because it worries me that my son could write a line about an ice shelf falling on him. And I've thought about that so much over the years, like how, I don't know, I'm not here to sort of pry about, your state of mind or anything, but I've thought loads over the years, thinking like, that's more insightful than 90% of the things I've written about music, that he could pick up that line and go, I never thought this was some. I never thought about you in the context of that song, or that's what that meant, and I just thought that was amazing. And when I read the thing that Roy wrote about your dad for the Guardian, I think about that a lot as well. I don't know. I'm pleased I met him for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, he could have maybe he wouldn't have fitted in the enemy, but you probably would have got more out of him than you got out of me on the day. He was. He was a writer himself, although he never actually finished or published a book. He used to work as long as I remembered, like from being, whatever age you start your memories, 5, 3, until the end. He worked on the same novel continuously on a typewriter, and would just rewrite different sections, and you would see big cardboard boxes full of pages and pages, often slightly different. It was a weird. I don't even know if it was good or not. And I know that he had it in him to write something good, but I don't know if this was it or not. It could be really good. I still don't know.
It sounds like it does sound a little bit OCD, if you don't mind me saying.
It does, and he used to have. He did he wasn't. I don't think he was massively encumbered by this or anything, but he used to have all, like the classics. He could just have been a bit sensible, but he used to switch off all the things at night and stuff, like all the sockets, all the lights, that sort of thing. And a few little things. Sometimes it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, isn't it? So it's hard to sort of pigeonhole it exactly, but I just think, I don't know. I just think there was a little bit of that in him.
How long has he been gone now?
I think it's, what is it? Well, is that 3 years? The end of this month.
There's loads of you as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. There's six siblings.
Was there Catholicism involved there?
You think so? No, there were. Well, my mum was Irish. But
right.
They didn't believe in anything, basically. religion or they believed in sort of facts and art and stuff.
Yeah, it's the best way, I think.
And it was I remember being embarrassed. We were like a small village, what, not 8 or 9 or something. It was a Church of England school, and there was this thing about like something to do, like write something about God or something. I stood up thinking I was really clever, going, I don't believe in God, he doesn't exist. And then I just got told off.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the world's changed. I think you'd probably you'd get embraced for that now, depending on the school. But I think it's, I don't know. I mean,
it wasn't like a severe telling off. It was just a bit of like, oh, I'm not sure if that's true. It was like the other time I got slightly in trouble related to my dad at primary school was when you had to tell an interesting story about your family's past. And the only one I could think of was when my dad was trying to avoid being in the war, and a Spitfire's wing clipped him on the forehead and crashed. And it was taxiing. And they said, that's not true. But as far as I know, it is 100% true. They tried to get him to sign off and pay for the damages whilst he was still recovering.
So that riffing on, I mean, I knew the journalist Pat Long a fair bit when I was younger, who sadly isn't with us anymore. And he was pretty good friends with Roy, your brother who managed you.
Yeah.
And he kind of clued me up a bit. I think we were watching you at. I have a memory of watching you at some festival with him again a long time ago, and he was telling me a bit about Roy, and he was like, "Oh, Roy's really into World War II and aircraft and all." And I was like, "Oh, this makes a bit more sense now." But did that go back to your dad? Was your dad interested in that stuff as well, or?
No, not massively. I mean, his interest in the war was how to avoid, violence and being in combat by any means necessary.
Yeah.
He was sort of an arty kind of free-thinking guy, I think, as far as I can tell.
Right.
And he ended up in some horrible places. He was in like Burma and stuff when it was pretty nasty, but he did anything he could. He wasn't like a heroic kind of guy, and he was proudly not like that, which I think is fair enough. Whatever, on a personal level, I think that's fair enough. It's like, what are all these stupid people doing fighting a war? I want to stay out of it, please.
No, I mean,
he wasn't fascinated by all that stuff, but Roy definitely is. He loves planes and stuff like that.
So how did that, where did Roy get that from?
I don't know. I mean, I remember like, as a teenager, he was slightly older. Before he got, he was at university. He was into like model aeroplanes, which I slightly like model aeroplanes, but I don't make any. I don't know where he got it from. I mean, I think he sees some, as much as the factual stuff, I think he sees some artistic element to like the names of it and the sort of weird role they have in the world. I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
It's weird. Like my dad was in the Navy, and like I grew up like just walking around shipyards all the time on holidays, and it only took a couple of years. It took maybe about 10 years later in my teens. Like I sort of remember realizing that just wasn't something that people did on holidays. It wasn't like a normal. Like some people went to like Bognor Regis or Centre Parks, rather than like to look at a retired nuclear submarine. And the thing that was weird about it as well was like he was in the Navy for. Like I'd always thought, if you'd asked me when I was like 30, if you'd gone, "Oh, how long was your dad in the Navy?" I was like, "Oh, he was in there 20 years and he sailed the seas." He was in there for 4 years, but like somehow it had left such an impact on him that he was dragging his son, to see decommissioned ships, 40 years later. It's really weird, like how this stuff sort of gets under your skin,
So where they were like sort of decomposing the ships, old broken things, or
he just loved all that, just dry docks and stuff. It's weird, like it's funny actually. Me and my wife.
I mean, they are interesting spaces. I'd go that far.
I think there's a weird sort of, I don't know. It's almost like if you're interested in like, I don't know, psychology or which I am, like I think war is quite a good vessel to sort of see that through a bit as well, to sort of, I don't know, I'm never really kind of interested in like, heroic tales of war because it's like, it's all a load of shit anyway, just people killing each other, that's rubbish. But I'm always kind of quite interested in like how it, almost like what you just said about your dad is more interesting to me than. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's not I'm interested in it, but it's not like a driving thing. But the stories that I remember of his is things just like, we used to have to pick the flies out of the bread, like just like grim, dirty little details and things like that. And how it's not nice, like avoid it, and that's it really,
Yeah, totally. There's a good little bridge actually to where I was going to go next. So obviously you've talked about this, but have all of the crazy people with flags in their Twitter bio stopped shouting at you for the name change yet?
Yeah, it didn't last long, and most of them didn't know who we were.
It was weird though that it was almost you were almost sort of dragged into a culture war though, like people who didn't know who you were. All of a sudden, it became, I don't know, something that would legitimize their argument.
Yeah, I mean that's just that's just part of. That's the weird part of the last few years or the last decade or so building up, isn't it? I mean, we did it to sort of kind of get out of that in a way. We knew there'd be a bit of a thing, maybe, like, they've changed their name and they've dropped the word British. Ooh. Like, we knew there might be a bit of a storm, as they say about it, but the main reason we did it was sort of to get out of that kind of weird, argumentative world, really.
I mean, did you? I don't know. I mean, having seen you play a lot over the years, like I never felt that there was any unsavory elements to crowds at your gig, or
No, we weren't Joy Division fighting off Nazis or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just like, I don't know, it just seemed a bit like of a burden. And, we're just a band. We don't take ourselves that seriously. But the world's become very seriously, and it just seemed like a very potent word, which was kind of colouring everything we do in a way, in a subtle way. It's like, we're writing this song about this, but we called this. There's a sort of weird, subtle reflection, and it just seemed a bit tired and old and irrelevant, and something that could easily. It just felt awkward, to me. I didn't like saying the band's name, which is a shame because it shouldn't be like that. But we didn't name ourselves because we were patriotic people in the start. It was a sort of a weirder, dafter idea than that. I
mean, it always just felt a bit sort of, kind of boys' own comics or something, like a bit, I don't know, like just sort of a bit knowing, really. Like it never felt like you were Oasis or something, you know what I mean? You were never going to have like a Union Jack guitar or anything like. It wasn't that,
No, I mean it was. I mean, I think it was in some ways it was a stupid name to choose because it's so it already means so much. Normally bands choose like a meaningless phrase or something, which is part of the reason I think why it appealed to us, because at the time things seemed a bit boring. We just wanted to do we'd almost do anything that just seemed like not the normal way to do things or against the normal way.
Yeah.
Instead of choosing a meaningless name, choose a name that's ripe for recycling or something. And it seemed like something in the past, and then all of a sudden, 20 years later, everyone's going a bit weird and getting all I don't know, there's some, it kind of summed it up. I've been thinking about it for ages, but the thing that kind of sums it up best is just like, imagine you're in a town and then there's a band called Austrian Power playing at the local pub or something. You'd think, what the fuck's that,
Yeah.
And it might be a group of artistic, well-meaning people, but you just think, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, totally.
It's just removing that doubt and lightening things so that we can have a sort of fresh new. We've been around for a while, and I think it's fair enough to want to do things. I think it's quite good when bands change their names or do something a bit radical or show they're not bored and want to engage with things. So
yeah, no, it's good.
Went for it.
No, I'm all for it. Is it this is the most boring question I think I've ever asked anyone I've interviewed. Is it a logistical nightmare to change your, I don't know, to convey that message that you change your name?
It wasn't so bad.
Hey, listen, I asked a really boring question. You have to give me a much better answer.
No, I'm gonna define not so bad. It should be, yeah. But I mean, our label took care of a lot of it. Computer stuff. Like the weird things are like, I don't know, BBC Six Music said that it might be quite hard to change. On your digital radio, you get now playing so and so. It's like hard to change the old songs and things like that. But it's not the end of the world, because it's not like we're saying everything we ever did was bad. It's just we've changed and this is a new thing. So we're not that bothered, really.
Yeah.
If it's a bit of a mess, it's a bit of a mess. And that's that,
Yeah, totally. So I've heard the new single and I thought it was lovely. Where are you at with the record? When's the record due?
It's due, what is it? I don't know. It's like in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, and it's pretty soon.
Yeah, it's pretty soon. It seems like a long... I don't know, because we've been doing it so long. It's been our longest sort of working period in between records, what we've spent on an album. And with COVID and everything like that, it was like everything was suspended.
Was that what delayed it then?
It was, but in a sort of silver lining way, it was like a bit of a blessing in a way, because we took a bit longer to finish it off. We had a bit longer to rework things and put it together nicely. And I think that was good for us. But, I've said it sort of a few times, but instead of being near a deadline and people going like, where is it? They were all like, have another year,
With, did you ever expect that the band would exist this long?
Nah, not really. I didn't really probably, when we started, I probably didn't expect to exist this long myself, let alone a band. It seems a phenomenally impossible length of time. Looking back, from a youngster's kind of mind, it's like everything's over by the time you're 30, isn't it?
How old are you now?
I am now 46.
Looking good for it, though.
Oh, thank you. I just had a shower, so my hair's all slicked. It's not actually slicked, it's just wet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The fact that it's still coming out of your scalp is something like mine's. I've given up now.
Yeah, but you're making up for it with a glorious beard. So it balances out, doesn't it?
Look at all of this grey, though.
Yeah, that's fine. That's wisdom.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Maybe you. Maybe if my therapist gets too sweary, then maybe you could fill the void. If you're just going to tell me nice things like that.
I mean, pretty much everyone I know who's ended up going to a therapist, either just for any reason, has come out of it. You know, they think it's a good idea, so I think it's all right. I've thought about it myself, but I just don't want to talk to a stranger.
Do you think is that a Northern man thing?
No, I'm not particularly tough. I think it's just a shyness thing. That's what I mean.
Oh, right, okay.
I just do podcasts instead, you know.
Hey, I get it a lot, you know.
Talking of Northern men, I'm just going to fill my Kronenberger.
Is it a little bit early?
No, it's 4:00. I go to bed about 9, so, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, often.
But
I don't go to bed, I just fall asleep.
You miss all the best telly if you go to bed at 9.
Well, there's good telly.
We live in a golden age of telly.
Okay.
Apparently.
Tip me off on some things I'm missing after the 9 o'clock.
Yeah, no, totally. I went to a gig last night. I haven't been to a gig in, 6 months. Went to see Idols. You know that band?
Yeah, of course.
Very shouty.
Yeah, I haven't seen them. I've heard their songs.
No, it was fun. It was fun. It was weird. It was at Brixton Academy.
Brixton Academy. Who was supporting?
Oh, well, I got the night that I didn't really know who they were. Previous nights, there was this band Big Joni that I really like.
Because Jenny Beth is doing one, isn't she?
Oh, well, I think that was last night. But I don't really, like, Savages are a bit of a blind spot for me. Like, I don't really know them. And I don't know her stuff. But should I have paid more attention?
I think it would have been interesting. I've seen Savages, and I like the Savages, but I think she's great. Yeah,
right.
I just think she's just a great person, and she puts on a good show with a lot of attitude and a good meaning. Yeah,
I'll do some retroactive discovery there. What I mean. When you guys came along, and I know this because I was the Enemy, and you know, sort of, I was the new music guy, you know, for a while. Like it, I mean this in the best possible sense, but you were like part of it. You know, there were people in the magazine that like loved you, but you also were like totally your own thing. You know, it wasn't like where you came from. You know, your kind of roots. It wasn't like you sort of came out of a scene, or you were just different. Like, I would probably argue that you almost feel more isolated now. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I don't even know. I agree with, like, we weren't really part of stuff. I mean, we were sort of, by the time we were sort of maybe getting known, there was a few things happening, but when we were starting, seemed like there was nothing happening. Later on, there was we did some, like, one of our first gigs with the Libertines, right? When they had the first drummer, even, as well as a couple of gigs later,
right,
and like the Strokes were going on and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I mean,
we didn't fit into that because we weren't that sort of cool. We weren't very glamorous or traditionally we didn't wear leather jackets or fit in that well with all that.
Yeah. What's the weirdest place that you ever found discarded foliage?
Discarded?
Well, I often used to... I often used to think, God, that must linger. All that bracken.
I guess most of it just... the thing is, it is only a bit... It's not like we chop down forest rents. It's like a bit of pruning. It's fairly healthy.
I mean, I do remember
people, like, in the old days, you'd see people taking it home and pictures of them on the tube and stuff like that, and you'd think that's nice.
Yeah, it was brilliant. But I do remember that day in Kendal, and I think it were Noble, and he were like picking up bits of pine cones and stuff for later in the evening. You know, almost sort of foraging throughout the day.
Yeah, but he's a weirdo. No, yeah.
I mean, and I say this with all respect, who's the weirdest one in Sea Power?
Oh God, I mean, it's a bit of, I don't know what that means, but I'd say, in a stereotypical way, it's got to be my brother, who I love a lot, but Hamilton, yeah. Just because he's quirky, and he doesn't give a shit about, fitting into anything.
Yeah, from what I remember of him, I would concur.
And also, like, he has a weird thing where certain kinds of people take a massive, comforting liking to him.
That's a good skill.
As if he's like a soothing energy.
No, I think like I say, it's been since we've spoken today. It's obviously even longer since I spoke to him, and I can remember that. No, that's good. The other thing I was going to ask you about, and I didn't know this right until I was doing a bit of reading the other day. So I like video games for my sins. You did the soundtrack for Disco Elysium, right?
Yeah.
How did that come about? How did that come about?
How did it come about? Robert, the sort of main writer behind it, Estonian guy, really liked Sea Power.
Wow.
And, quite a lot of years ago now, it must be 4 or 5 years ago, he was sort of like, just kept in touch with Dave, our manager, and often you hear these things from, in our case, Dave, your manager, and he's like, oh, it's probably going to be shit, that, isn't it? It's just, what, a computer game? Yeah. Have they got a big budget? It's probably going to be rubbish, but yeah. And then he's like, oh, well, he's come over and he's in Liverpool or something. He wants to just have a chat. And he was just such a nice guy, like really tall guy with loads of hair, and just kept going. He was like, he wasn't what I think of as a computer games. He was like an artist writer kind of guy, and he was just like on and on about it. And the more we talked, the more we started to like him. It was just one of those things which sort of came out of nowhere, I guess. I mean,
this within the sort of realms of writing about video games, this kind of phrase gets thrown around far too much. But I mean, that game is art. That's an incredible game.
Yeah, well, it's like he wrote I don't know, well over like 1 million words for it.
Yeah,
and it's just incredibly. There's a lot of depth to it. The art, the artwork and the world of it was inspired by all sorts of good things, and it looked beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
He actually, he was very. We don't really take direction from people that easily, but everyone was happy from him because he was so good to work with. He'd come up with weird ideas. He'd be like, no, go weirder, go darker, go like more abstract, and he wasn't sort of ever pushing for some mainstream thing. I think he was surprised how well it did.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That the older I get, the more I kind of think with creativity and art. I really do feel a little bit like if you do what you want to do, that's the stuff that eventually people will find, rather than if you do what you think you should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can't think of a name now. What's the artist who's having a massive thing at the Tate at the moment?
Oh, I don't know.
Chinese lady. Anyway, yeah, she's a prime example of that. Something with a Y. I don't want to have a guess because it'd sound ignorant.
No, totally. You can't set the British out of the British Sea Power and then try to pronounce a Chinese name that you don't know.
She's sort of stuck through it, through the 80s, 70s and everything. Ended up in a mental home, and now she's the sort of most popular artist in the world.
Oh, right.
And she's brilliant.
I will investigate that. Yeah, I can't think of any post-Watershed TV to recommend to you, but thanks for the tip. I will go seek that out. When do you? I mean, you can't remember when the record comes out, but when do you know when you go on tour?
April.
Is that when was that you touching wood there?
No, it's definitely in April.
No, but more as in like, was that was that a sort of like a all as long as things work out, everything has been very tentative.
I'm sort of fairly confident. I mean, yeah, I think it probably, the way things are looking, yeah, you never know. We got in a sort of sneaky tour in October for about a week and played a few little venues and did some new songs and stuff. And I think we were quite lucky with that because a lot of people we're working with who do our, technician stuff and driving and stuff have had like 7 out of 8 tours cancelled in the last few months and that. Right. So, I don't know, but
it feels like it's on its way back.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Listen, Jan, it's been so nice to catch up. Let's put something in the diary for like 20 years' time, maybe. Do you think Do you think you'll make that long?
Well, I'll be quite old then. I think it's possible.
Yeah, my
3 to 4 to 1.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, let's keep an eye on it. I think out of your plants, the one that is right behind you, that's the one I'm a little bit worried about. The one on the left looks in fine health.
That one?
No.
That's the one you're worried about?
No, the one on my left. Yeah.
The one in the middle?
Yeah.
But he's a survivor. He's one of the only 3 plants that survived the refurbishment and building of this house. Like when there were no windows and plasterers in and the air was really damp for months because of all the plaster drying and that sort of thing in the winter when you're not meant to plaster. It's a survivor.
I'm worrying on Julie.
Yeah, it's a tough guy, that one.
Listen, great to speak to you, Scott. Speak to you again.
Yeah, I'd like to anytime you want.
See you, dude. Bye.
Cheers, man.